But if in fact this did happen, why is it that neither side seems to have then triumphed? It's over, 50,000 years later since they arrived here, and certainly 12,000 years ago since they got into the War of the Gods. I just wanted to sketch the background and show you how many texts actually talk about the War of the Gods, because if I was just telling you it, you wouldn't get it. It's there. It's in the records. But why are we 11,000 years later still talking about this? If evil had triumphed, right, the serpent masters of God, we'd all have no problem. We'd all be slaves, working in mines, and no worries, right? Completely over and done with. Evil would be all over the world. And if the good side had won, well, then we'd all be living in peace and harmony, wouldn't we? In a paradisical civilization. Neither which are true. We have the schizophrenia I was talking about earlier. Each one of us have it inside. And it's collective, and it's political, and it's found in every corner of the globe. Well, this is because of an unforeseen variable. And that is what it is. When this thermonuclear war that probably involved even weapons we don't know about, and a lot of psychic stuff, when you read the Celtic legends, they're talking about a lot of stuff coming even out of the mind in magical wars. But with an emphasis on technology, on hardware, don't doubt that. An unforeseen variable occurred. The violence of these people awoken the violence of the earth. Remember the first deluge I told you was an atrocity? It's mentioned in all the records of how the animals and people died. But it did subside after a while. It changed the earth. But it subsided after a few hundred years. This violence, they say that the radiation from the weapons incinerated the entire atmosphere. All the moisture in the atmosphere was totally irradiated. And this affected the magnetic aura of the earth and the Roche limit, and the earth careered off of its axis and went into what we call the pole shift situation. And then when it shifted its pole, Mars was affected, and all the other planets spun out of control, which they still look like they have an influence from this. But what happened even more importantly, the Roche field sent out its magnetic powers, its magnetic energy, and the Van Allen belt, the asteroid belt that we talked about earlier on, now it sucked back all that debris from the lost planet of Tiamat. And all the ice and all the water and all of that planet's debris, trillions of tons of this stuff. I've got in my book there and on this website endless quotes from legends, exactly specifically talking about this. We just don't have time to show them all, but it's all in the manuscript. This stuff poured into the earth, and that's why they talk about the 40 days of rain, how the earth stood still in the sky and man couldn't see even his brother's face and all of that. But this deluge of water fell in now with a vengeance. And it was so powerful that it created unbelievable devastation. The pole shift we're talking about here. Studies have shown that at 10,000 years BC, the celestial pole was inclined at the angle of 30 degrees from its present position. This is, in turn strongly suggests that the terrestrial axis then orientated differently from today. The gigantic worldwide tectonic disturbances of the late Pleistocene times occurred almost simultaneously on a near unimaginable scale, I should say, precisely what could be expected from a powerful external influence, but not from the Ice Age conditions conventionally believed. This is from a book you all should get called When the Earth Nearly Died. I have it abstracted in my dossier, so don't worry about it. Then the Tahoe, not far from here, the Tahoe Indians are saying, there was a time when their tribe possessed the whole earth and were strong and numerous and rich. But a day came when a people rose up stronger than they and defeated and enslaved them. Afterward, the Great Spirit sent an immense wave across the continent from the sea, and this wave engulfed both the oppressors, look at that last line, both the oppressors and the oppressed, leaving only a very small remnant. Very suggestive that. Plato says, in one day and one fatal night, there came the mighty earthquakes and inundations that engulfed that warlike peoples. Look at this references. That debris that fell in from Tiamat, plus the earth change, the earth pole shift, that is what sank those 5 or 4 continents I've been telling you about. Our planet had hardly any water on it at all. It only had what was called the Miocene Ocean, which is where the Baltic is now. You know where the Dead Sea and Caspian Sea, most of Russia, was an ocean, granted. And there's probably some other water here and there. All these scholars are still wondering how the Indians got over to there and how the Egyptians got over to South America. There was no bloody water, so all you had to do was walk. Right? But I tell you, when those continents, Appalachia, Tyrrhenia, Oceania, Beringia, Fennoscandia, when that debris fell in, that is what put these continents thousands and thousands of fathoms under the oceans that we have today. You know the fear of water that some people have, the fear of oceans? It's for a reason. Those ain't even our waters. When you look at the ocean, you're looking at Tiamat. What was left of it. John, the Bible. I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. See? The reference is to no more water, or water. And the fact that the earth was born again as the ocean subsided from the next continents. Implying that the seawater covered everything at one time. And yeah, our human fears and phobias. Fear of darkness, caves and hollow places, of water, of heights, of loneliness, of insects and certain animals, enclosed spaces, foreigners. You know, the psychologist is going to say, well, you know, that's just the way the mind is. We have psychological fears. Hey, what would happen if those are physiological, racial memories? See, again, I don't believe that nature and the human mind is that, is that messed up, right? So that, right, slip into my Irish a bit, that does this to us. We're not plagued by just, you know, psychological Freudian problems for no reason. There's research now that proves that this is physiological. Well, look, if it only happened 50,000 years ago, that's a dot in time. You know, in the physiological timeline, the phylogenetic timeline, that is an extremely short period of time. When you're cowering, when your forefathers are cowering in caves, watching the universe be destroyed around them, I think you're going to remember that. So when you see certain insects or see water or have dreams, right, etc., 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 it's right there in the back of your consciousness. But when we've talked about it, the leaders put it down. Oh, well, you know, let's get Freud out, or let's get somebody, wheel them out and give an explanation for this. They'll do anything. Even if it doesn't hold water, any of these philosophies or truths, they'll do it anyway because they just don't want you to look at what it really might be. Julian Jaynes, an amazing author, American, author of The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind, another book that's a must. He claimed that this period, thousands of years ago, was a time of intense psychosis for the emerging human race. Okay, so it's physiological. Remembrance in our minds. But what was the variable? The variable was the destruction of the earth. But in that destruction of the earth, think of how it would have affected those people. Right? Millions of the serpent race would have been destroyed. Not millions of them. Millions of our earth people. Say there was about 2,000 original alien visitors. Just let's take a number, right? How many do you think of those people were left? Probably 50. Of maybe several thousand sons of the serpent people, maybe only 2,000 of them were left. How many were left of the Adamic entourage that they took with them? Who knows? But what was much, 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 much more a greater loss to these aliens was in this war and the earth changes and the deluge, they lost their technological hardware. You know, they were still digging it up, you know. And then they sequester it, just like they show you in Indiana Jones. Calling them children's toys and what have you. You know, it's all buried under there. But they lost it. And now, they were trapped. Maybe they had a couple of devices and so on. They had it all in here, but in here is no good to a technologically advanced race. Remember, their whole thing was that they were technologically advanced. When the Earth did this, it destroyed all their hardware, or most of their hardware. All the computers, all the supercomputers, all the technologies that they had, all the weapons of power, their spaceships, the lot, the computers, everything gone. They suffered. Their numbers were reduced as well. That's why it didn't get the end game done then. So, I don't know how much time we have left, but let's just go as much as we can. There was a point then, do you think that these people would just sit around and do nothing about it? Their agenda has become then the moving of mankind forward to the point where the super technological hardware that was destroyed in the War of the Gods could be remanufactured. Some instruments and weapons survived, and these were sequestered in underground chambers and in temple precincts referred to as the Holy of the Holies. They keep everybody else away from it, you know. So they give it this holy bit slant, you know. No, I thought God works through people to people. He doesn't need objects to work through. That already makes me suspicious. I'm not saying that minerals and other things don't have power. Of course they do. But you're talking about God, you know, it's immediate, it's direct, you know. So this is what this was done. They'd build a temple. They'd build what we now know as a temple or a church. And they'd build it, you know, with different chambers or underground chambers. And then they'd say that we're putting in there the holiest of things. All they are is a big building to protect what's left of this technological hardware that we now know as some sacred relic or something like that. You got to read behind the lines. In Welsh, in the Gaelic